I'm Kate Seidler, and I would like to introduce Marianne McKenna and Dee Dee Hanna, invite them to come on stage with me. Well, first of all, I thought that was a beautiful film, and I wanted to lead off by asking you, all four women in this film, 3 architects, 1 landscape architect, had a larger mission than just completing a project. They cared deeply about protecting, celebrating cities, celebrating neighborhoods and people. They are all very different women, and I think the filmmaker was good at reflecting the different personalities and their missions. What do you feel in your career as architects is your bigger purpose? What do you think about when you design buildings?
Marianne, why don't you go first?
So, I think these women are incredible, and there's a huge amount to learn. They're in parallel professions. One of the things that I most admire is the kind of drive, the integrity, the drive, the ambition, and the determination to finish the job, to actually do the job right till the very last piece of it. And that is something they've inspired me. I saw Phyllis Lambert last week at the CCA. I was doing something else, but I went up and saw her, and she said, "I'm quite tired. I've been up since 2:30. I can still do a charrette." And I said, "Like, what were you doing, Phyllis?" And she said, "Well, I was editing my book." I said, "Well, what do you mean editing your book?" And she said, "I was checking the footnotes." And I said, "Like, don't you have someone to do that?" And she said, "If you want to get it right, do it yourself." And it is absolutely true. So in any project, one of the things that I've been privileged to do is actually follow through on a project. And, the world we live in, it's not a sole practitioner. It's not one person who does everything. These are collaborative projects. They need a leader, they need a driver, they need inspiration, they need, a team needs corralling and decision making. But in the end, one person drives these projects to the very end. And so if you think, perhaps my most favorite project has to be, and since we are here in Toronto, is Kerner Hall. And that project, was something that we took through every single detail until we had completed that. So it's a project that is, you start from the inside out, you start from the outside in. It's a project that commands more than just a room. It's a city in itself, and it expands into the city in fascinating ways, onto property that it doesn't own, onto the domain of Bloor Street, onto Philosopher's Walk, which is owned by the university. It even absorbs parts of Varsity Stadium. So, there's no small thing nothing is a small thing in architecture. When you take on even the smallest project, it has implications way beyond what you see. And, so when you go to a piece of architecture, go to a building, you have to think about those so much. And so that's, these women are very inspirational at so many levels.
I can see you going back 20 years from now and telling them that they have to make sure that Kerner Hall stays clean. What do you feel that women bring to the world of architecture?
Yeah, I think women bring a different sensibility, and I think the schools do a very good, create a great context for women in architecture. It's about 50-50 now. The challenge is in the profession itself. So I think once they get out of school, the context into which women architects, intern architects land is much more challenging. And in some way, I don't think they're prepared to tough it out, or that the context is not as welcoming as they anticipated. I think in school you're very well received as women. My class at Yale was 40-60, and the women won all the awards.
We won all the awards as well. Yeah,
my question. It was quite phenomenal. And now there are 17%. Or something, the statistics are 17 to 23% of women, of those 50% of women in the profession. And so I think it's not, I don't think it's women, I think it's the structure of the profession.
How do we change that to keep women in the workplace? And I think that we have to change the society, and maybe going back to these trailblazers, we do have children, and we you know, we have to take care of a lot of the world. It needs to, our society, community, and the way that we look at women in the workplace needs to change to keep women in the workplace at a higher level. It's difficult, right?
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of perseverance on the part of women, but I think it is changing. I think the most recent generations, Toronto is a great city for diversity and inclusion, and I think that the dialogue around that topic changes the context for everyone.
Have you had a millennium that's actually done any overtime whatsoever?
One of the things I want to talk about with the film is there was sort of a zeitgeist at the time. I mean, we were talking about these women were all born out of modernism, and I feel there's a revival today of modernism. And one of the terms that I hear a lot is this idea of biophilic design. Am I saying it properly? That the idea that if I'm a lover of nature, and how do you incorporate nature into your buildings, Marianne?
Well, I think it is some biophilia.
Biophilic design.
Biophilic design is
if
that.
I'm a biophilia, I'm somebody who loves nature.
Call my next
Not
my
Ophelia, as
granddaughter.
my mother would call me.
Biophilia.
Yeah.
Kind of lovely. But I think it is the movement toward a more sustainable building culture, building environment, and so
Which
that
I feel they were all saying. You know?
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Especially
is,
Cornelia.
Well, and I don't think I think it is something that, I think as Canadians we understand the value of opening up our buildings. I mean, we all worked for Barton Myers, who had garage doors that opened up to a restaurant on the street, you know, that we understood convertibility. And I think we have to bring that back. And I think if there were, you know, you keep thinking, what if the 50% of the population that is women, what if it was 50-50 in architecture? Would that change the profession? And I think it would dramatically. And I think that's what we need to push for, and we need to support women in the profession. There is equality.
Marianne, you've designed a almost 100% sustainable building that I went to visit in Winnipeg. Is that?
My office did.
Yeah.
Yes,
But it was
Manitoba,
extraordinary.
Manitoba. It is an extraordinary building. It's very interesting, though. It's had a lot of publicity, but there's never been a building to equal it. It's Manitoba Hydro in the center of Winnipeg, and it does many things, not only as a sustainable building, but as a kind of cultural phenomenon as well. It took 3,000 people from outlying individual offices around the perimeter of Winnipeg, brought them into the downtown, and the drivers of the project did interesting things like didn't want a cafeteria in the building because they wanted people to go out at lunchtime and support the downtown. You know, so it had a kind of cultural narrative that went through the building at many levels, but also at that, you know, it's designed in collaboration.
Okay, I'm getting a signal that it's almost to end, but there's one question I felt that there was a really poignant moment in the film where Cornelia talked about housing. And she, you know, was walking us around her project, which I thought was beautifully done. And she obviously saw a homeless person and was quite concerned, and talked about the idea of low rent housing versus affordable housing.
So I don't work with developers a lot, but I'm working with a couple of developers trying to build real communities that are focused around an aspect. One is focused around a Catholic church up near Yonge and Eglinton, the other one a church on Bloor Street, where actually that entity, which is part of the project, can actually be the nexus of a community. And it can be, but I think if you know, it's the economics, the commercial aspects, you know, which all of these people deplore, all of our women, our 90-year-old women deplore. It's a problem. Building condos at the quality level that we're building that will not, the skins of which, the envelopes of which will not last for 50 years. Yes. I think there's a tragedy. So I think movement back toward rental, trying to find rental housing that is affordable, but I think really something's got to crack because we're just, you know, nobody's blinking, and it just goes on and on and on. Smaller units, unlivable. I think affordability is the major issue, and it really has to come out of policy because it's not coming through the development community.
Well, I thought the film was terrific. I especially loved Denise Scott Brown, and I loved when she said, "I'm embracing aging." I have a 91-year-old mother who's sitting right there, who is a star and who is the most supportive, loyal human I know. And I know this festival is dedicated to Nicole's mom, but I dedicate this to my mom.
Go Jane.
Go Jane. Our mom.